But oh my God, like spare a minute for the world's smallest violin of influencers who want free stuff and also want to be paid for all the time that they spent learning how to be influencers and picking up their trade.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS of the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. All right. Thank you for joining us for episode 2. I'm going to bring my co-hosts and our guest up on stage, and let's get into it. So first of all, reintroducing our reigning champion, Jenna Cummings. Jenna, I see that you have left the booth at the Outback Steakhouse where you were joining us from last time, and you have crossed the pond that is the Atlantic Ocean to join us here in London.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that you and I are in the same building, but you wouldn't let us sit in the same room together. So yes, but I got the room.
Yeah, it doesn't work. I can barely set up my own microphone. I definitely can't deal with two in the same room. Anyway, moving on. And joining us in the lower right-hand corner, we have DuBose. Don't make fun of my dog, Cole. How's it going, DuBose?
Good. I mean, Queso and I have had to work through a lot of issues in the last week once he heard the podcast, but he's forgiving. So I think
he doesn't like Jenna. He doesn't like Jenna anyway. I don't think he could like Jenna less.
He likes 10 people. Jenna was number 11. Those are the facts.
All right. Well, let's see if we can get him to like our guest, our first guest for Punchy, the man, the myth, the legend of the B2B banking marketing world in the United States, Derik Sutton. How's it going, Derik?
Pretty good, other than there's no way I can live up to that intro. So I feel like it's all downhill from here. So let's rip.
Let's rip. All right. Let's get into it. So we've got 3 stories to talk about today and a couple things in the grab bag. We will see if we get to them. So the first story comes to us from fooddive.com. DuBose, I know that's one of your favorite sites. And it is why Kraft Heinz is making macaroni and cheese, ice cream, and Grey Poupon wine. So this is actually from a month ago, and we covered it in Zag, but I think it was really interesting, and I wanted to get everybody's thoughts on it. So basically, Kraft Heinz, big CPG company, they're launching an effort to build relevance for some of their iconic brands in a way that aims to combine whimsy and consumer interest into items that attract both social media attention and sales. So it's kind of a mashup, taking some of these brands that have some nostalgia, have some inherent value to them, like Kraft mac and cheese, like Grey Poupon, and doing kind of product extensions. DuBose, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think the most important issue is it Poupon or Poupon? Because
well, you know what? We've got 26 minutes to figure it out if we want to just.
Well, that's how I want to use the time. But
all right, negative 2 points to DuBose for making fun of my pronunciation. It's
a strong start. But so I would say one of the interesting things with this is I think brand collaborations are naturally increasing because I think you see more of a breakdown between brand ownership and even IP and culture now. Kind of it's the Iron Giant, Ready Player One style of brand ownership. Stuff is mixing together to increase its footprint. I think when I see things like this, I naturally think relevance is the word that sometimes doesn't fit. I think relevance is sometimes an overused word, and I think not every partnership is going to be Supreme and North Face. It's not something where you're bringing 2 passionate fan bases together and getting people to think differently about the brand through partnership. I think sometimes it's just funny to be able to buy the dust from cheese puffs or to buy Grey Poupon wine. So I would say these things are incredibly exciting. It's way more interesting to watch than brand banter on social. And I think for me, I think the only thing we have to be careful of is what they actually achieve, because it's probably less changing hearts and minds and more getting people who are already fans of the brand to just be able to buy some funny stuff in new ways.
My question is, what would marketers talk about if brands didn't banter on social?
The news. It would be terrifying.
They would argue
Derik,
over the pronunciation.
Or Jenna, go ahead.
Yeah, they would argue over the pronunciation of these things. DuBose, thanks for falling on your sword on that one, because I was also going to make fun of Eric for it, but you went first, so thank you so much. Yeah. I don't know. Well, I think this is like, I don't really have that much to contribute to this other than I think it's interesting, and I guess it works. Like Oreo did like almost this exact collaboration as like the Grey Poupon one. There was like an Oreo wine, and I guess it must work because I was walking around Brooklyn when that happened, and at least 2 of the local like wine shops had like sandwich board signs that said, "We do not have the Oreo like wine." So clearly people ask for these things. And I guess to DuBose's point are like, it's fans who are interested in buying new stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I think what you're not going to get is wine fans. I imagine in that what Oreo is not going is we are going to acquire a large share of the wine market. I imagine you just have to be realistic about where the ceiling is on these things.
Yeah, I agree. I look at this as like a very like if this were the meal, right? So if this were a food-based thing and their primary meal is serving up their traditional marketing, I look at this as just a little appetizer and they're trying something seasonal in the menu. And if it pulls people in, and I mean, to me, the quote of like it rose, it drove up Kraft sales 4% is the key bullet point in the article that they're looking at, right? Does this thing, can I put out this seasonal campaign that it drives in additional sales of what I'm doing? If they're truly trying to challenge and do something independent, I don't think that bullet point lives in the article.
Wait, was it sales or was it engagement on their social channels?
It's been engagement, yeah, which is probably pretty soft, like macaroni and cheese.
That was a good mac and cheese joke.
Yeah, well done. Well done. I mean, I do think that there is something here, if we kind of take a step back and not focus on the execution, but maybe the approach or the insight that led them to do this. I think there is something here where a lot of brands have more value in them than what's currently being extracted through the existing products that they offer, right? Especially for brands like Grey Poupon, Kraft mac and cheese, and some of those more, the ones that we really care about, the brands that people actually care about it. It's funny. I was actually looking back over some old Zag newsletters, and there was an article that we published a while back, not that we published, that we covered a while back. I think it was from Havas, that talked about how something like 75% of brands, could disappear tomorrow and people wouldn't care. And so I think if you are a business that has one of those 25% of brands, a brand that people actually do care about, is there a way to kind of extract more value from it through NPD or through mashups or through doing something a little bit more creative?
I mean, I think to that point, your product is one of the best forms of marketing. If you want to play with that, if you want to stretch it, I think it just increases the footprint for your brand in consumers' lives. It's probably, and I think to Derik's point, it's not going to be the game-changing kind of shift for your larger business, but it's a great way to stake new territory and presence in people's daily life if they already kind of think about you.
Great. All right. 3 points for DuBose, -2 points for Jenna for also making fun of my pronunciation of Grey Poupon. And Derik, I was going to give you 5 points for pointing out business results. However, you didn't really stick the landing on that one.
But I stuck the mac and cheese joke. I got the mac and cheese joke.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 3. Is that all right?
That's fair.
3.
That's
you're our first guest, so I really want to make sure that this works for you.
Yeah, good call.
Okay. Next article. So Derik, this one's coming for you. So from our friend, Jason McCullough over at FinTech Business Weekly. It's a fantastic Substack news article that if you're in the FinTech world, you should definitely subscribe to. So he does a great teardown of Varo, the first chartered neobank in the US that potentially could run out of money by the end of the year. And I think there's a couple conversations here for our FinTech listeners. There's certainly the conversation of how are these challenger banks going to make money? Did it really make sense to spend $100 million on becoming the first chartered neobank in the US? But the thing that I think is more relevant, since this is more of a marketing conversation, is so we can actually take a look at the P&L from Varo based on their most recent $510 million Series E rounds. And they spent, at least based on this, where's the line item? Almost over $160 million in the last 2 quarters on marketing. So that's a lot. And it's really interesting to me kind of just how competitive this space has become and how much money a lot of these very well-funded challengers are pouring into marketing. So Derik, what do you think about this?
We could probably build a whole conversation around this. I mean, this is a very interesting conversation to me. So I think this comes down, if I were to like boil this down to one statement, and we come from a jobs to be done background. To me, this is personas versus progress. Like, it's a classic example. So I feel like a lot of these neobanks and a lot of these identity-based banking environments are really leaning into this persona-based narrative from a business plan perspective. And I think that leaves a lot wanting for the consumer, if I'm being honest, and like the numbers tend to bear it out, in that at the end of the day, customers are looking for progress in their financial life. They're not looking for a relatable identity in their banking. I look at this as like, it's a really expensive version of like personalized checks. Like in the US, you used to get like the Disney checks or the Star Wars checks or whatever. And people like related to that, and banks were trying to be like, hey, like we know you, like you can kind of have your identity in banking. But to me, that is so just, it's just so thin in a foundation. And at the end of the day, consumers are looking for progress in their financial lives of like, how does this thing help me get to the next paycheck? Or how does this thing help me, buy my next house or finance my car or do whatever? And if it only goes so far as, wow, this website really speaks to me, but then I get in and the account's the same, the transaction's the same, the bill pay is the same, it's got a glossier user interface, that doesn't force me to leave the existing habit or product that I'm using and make a total shift of my financial life, based upon this. So I'll kind of pause there. There's some other things I could dive into, but I'd love other people's feedback on that.
I probably agree. I mean, I guess I should be careful, like not to armchair quarterback this, because obviously we have no idea what's going on, like actually within this marketing organization. But I guess like looking at like, this article that we linked, shows what their customer acquisition costs and their average revenue per user were. And essentially you can see like as they're bringing on tons and tons of new accounts, their average deposits like per account holder is going down wildly, like daily usage is going down like wildly, and a couple other things. And to me, I guess like I don't know, I had flashbacks to being on the receiving end of briefs that Eric and DuBose and I have gotten of the like, okay, we just care about user acquisition. We just need to get like new accounts on board without consideration for what are the other metrics for the health of our business that we care about around things like, do these people have deposits with us? Where are we actually making our money? And what like user issues are we actually trying to solve that therefore should be reflected in our marketing efforts? Again, I don't know what the proper football version of armchair quarterbacking is. And so I guess like maybe like, I don't know, but that's exactly what it reads like to me, of how many times have we gotten like that from, a well-funded startup that's like, we just have to show user acquisition to our investors for our funding or whatever else. And we've always pushed back of what is the value that you're trying to provide? What actually matters to your business? How are you making money? And we don't get that. And that's kind of what this reads like to me. Yeah.
It's a complete disconnect between communications and the user experience afterwards. Because to your point, you can recruit people in, but if you're not giving them a reason to carry on, if you're not giving them, I think to that point of personas versus progress, knowing who your customer is only half the job. Actually acting on that and delivering progress for the category is where some of these neobanks are going to succeed. And I think at the end of the day, there's far too many of them and far too little progress at the moment. So there is a real challenge on figuring out how people double down to deliver that.
Yeah, what I would say is, to your point, Jenna, the marketing may be actually very successful here, quite frankly. The spend may be getting the metrics that they put forth in the board deck or the pitch deck, for all we know. The challenge is they have to spend so much money to meet these customers and these channels where they are, just to pull them in for this soft, what I think is a soft persona-based business plan, that the drop off of this has to be huge, right? Like that's what I'd be looking at, is like, what's the drop off in deposit acquisition, like long-term retention, average collected balance versus, a traditional chase. And I think that the neobank model is really in jeopardy, quite frankly. I think that if there were something to it, we would already see something like Square in the model take off, or in the market. And what I mean by that is, if you think about Square coming in as a challenger, kind of a neobank merchant processing solution, if you will, when it first came in, just a very small, slimmed down way for a merchant to download an app and collect payment That was very, different than traditional merchant processing at the time. And they spoke to the user experience and easy acquisition, onboarding of the end user, et cetera, et cetera. They were speaking to a particular demographic, business owners. And now they are, huge, and they're going to be the next Chase of financial services in many regards. If neobanking, to me, if there was something behind it, we would have seen an entity rise up and kind of become that Square type trajectory in the market.
So the thing I'll throw in, and then I'll let you build on it, Jenna, is, so one of the things I think about a lot, and actually end up having a lot of conversations with, particularly when we're talking to earlier stage businesses, and a lot of those are fintechs actually, is I think a lot of people who aren't marketers think of marketing as advertising. So they think of it as, all right, well, what kind of message do I need to put out there? And actually, I think marketing, when it's done well, is the bridge between the product and the customer. It's much more holistic, because ultimately, like long-term sustainable growth, as we're certainly seeing from these numbers, doesn't only come from how effectively you bring a product to market. It comes from how effectively you can actually find product market fit to deliver real differentiated value and solve jobs to be done in different ways in the market. So I think with a lot of these, hyper growth, heavily funded businesses, a lot of the marketing is just advertising. It is just customer acquisition. It's not actually the more holistic, how do we use marketing to bring the voice of the customer into the business and actually make the product more effective at solving those jobs to be done.
Jenna, did you have something to that point? Oh, go ahead, Jenna. Oh, we're all going to be entirely too polite now. I mean, I think it boils down to the idea of advertising and marketing as a value creation exercise or a value amplification exercise from the product. And I think a lot of the time, comms especially is a value amplification exercise. So I think, creating an experience, creating a product, creating a service that inherently has a value that communications can amplify starts to give you a natural link between what you're providing to the world and how you're talking about it in a way that avoids the situation we're talking about right here. I think naturally sometimes when there's the Kevin Costner build a baseball field in Kansas style model of let's put the ads out and figure out what the product is as we go, what you end up with is a field where a load of people from the 1920s are playing baseball. And that's not a situation any business wants to get into.
Wasn't it Iowa?
Field of Dreams is in Iowa.
It was Iowa. Come on, DuBose. -1 point.
Nebraska. Someone look this up. I'm not losing a point on that.
Have they let you keep your American citizenship, or do you have to?
Look, I know it wasn't. I'm from Alabama. I know what wasn't filmed in Alabama. Field of Dreams.
Everything.
So. Forrest Gump. We have Forrest Gump, and that's it.
Look at Sweet Home Alabama.
Good movie.
I mean, there's a movie. Yeah, come on.
We got 2.
All right. Shall we move on? You got 2 points, DuBose, and then you lost a point. Jenna, I'm giving you 4 points. I thought you had a good answer. Derik, I'm giving you 8 because you brought up jobs to be done. I'm surprised that it took you 15 minutes, but I respect it. And you know that I have a soft spot for jobs to be done. So quick point check going into the final round. Derik has 11. Jenna and DuBose are kind of shooting themselves in the foot by making fun of me or getting American movie references wrong. So Jenna, you are at 2. And DuBose, you are at, quick math, you're also at 2. So you got a little bit of a gap to close with Derik going into this last round. All right, here we go. A story from Marketing Brew. Is paying influencers and free products ever okay? To be honest, I could read you the summary of the article, but the headline basically says it all. Jenna, let's throw it to you for this one. Do you have hands that you want to throw in this article?
I'm struggling with this one. I hate this article because it uses the word SpawnCon, right, as a portmanteau for sponsored content. Do you guys know James Acaster, the comedian James Acaster? He does a bit about how horrible the British phrase spag ball is. Like, it's just a linguistically like offensive phrase, spag ball, like when you like say it. And I think that SpawnCon is as equally offensive. SpawnCon, like this is a written article. You couldn't have just typed out sponsored content. Okay, fine. Anyways, moving on. I'm also really torn because on the one hand, like, I'm a dirty leftist and I'm very much on the side of like, yes, everyone should be paid for their labor. Like, I think, unpaid internships are a scam, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, I don't care about this problem. I don't care about this problem of influencers. Come complaining that they're not getting paid for the dubious value of their labor. I don't know. I think that the takeaway from this really is like, for some people, for some goods and services, I think it's fine that they get paid this way, like, hotel stays or whatever else. I do think, as much as it pains me to admit this, like, yes, probably it is a good thing that the industry is heading towards maybe like some kind of standardization for rates for these types of things. I think that's beneficial to everybody, like, in the ecosystem. But oh my God, like, spare a minute for the world's smallest violin of influencers who, like, want free stuff and also want to be paid for all the time that they spent learning how to be influencers and picking up their trade. Yeah.
I will speak for the influencers here. Like, I think, there's an interesting irony in what we're talking about, in the idea that the growth of influencers came from the democratization of social media, where everyone could monetize their recommendation, monetize their presence. Everyone kind of goes for that few minutes of fame that they can use to flog Taco Bell, if you're listening, and things like that. So I think, the thing I'd say is there's an irony then in trying to standardize that industry. Because in a way, what you're saying is, we want a base level of compensation for the presence because we've put time in to basically sharpen our ability as influencers, yet anyone can hop in to become an influencer. So I tend to agree with you, Jenna, in a way where I think I always get naturally uncomfortable when there's you're going to be paid in exposure style model of things. But at the same point, I think one of the things why influencers have become such a growth channel for marketers, and there's so many options, is because anyone can get into it. And when anyone can get into it, you're naturally going to be undercut.
Are influencers a growth? What does a growth channel mean to you? What does that mean? It's
like growing. Like, someone hasn't turned off the influencer spigot.
Okay.
There are too many influencers.
All right. Okay.
If we were to move some influencers out, by the time we came back, there would be more influencers in the influencer box. Yeah,
they're like rabbits. I feel like, I feel like I'm being judged because I have a freezer full of Kraft macaroni and cheese ice cream right now that all came through my SpawnCon TikTok account. That, I don't know. I don't care about this that much, other than like grow a pair and learn to negotiate. You know what I mean? Like, if you're an influencer and you want to get paid in cash, like, learn how to negotiate. Like, here's the real world. Go.
I'd like to donate any points that I get to Derik, just as a you go, man. Yeah. No, I look at like, there's some dose of realism here. I think is like necessary. Where again, like, hey, like, if you want to be a business and like you want to compete in the free market, exactly, set your prices. If you can't get paid in cash because the quality of your content is like not good enough, sucks to suck. Get good.
Does that not go against your lefty ethos of people should get paid for internships? Because what I hear is, we've all spent a lot of time listening to and being around Gary. The market is the market, right? If the market doesn't want to pay you for an internship, the market doesn't have to pay you for an internship. However, there is a role for, let's set some standards. Let's do what's right here. So how do you reconcile those two things, Jenna?
I think the internships are different, like, especially for students. I definitely, I do think that, this idea that like people should be paid for their labor, that like people, there is inherent worth in any human's time is probably a reasonable starting point for most things. But I will say that, one of the like relatively few things that I kind of agree with Gary on this position on is like for some people or positions, if there's no fucking chance that you are going to get exposure to such and such a person, and like you can set the constraints of that within like, okay, I'm going to go be Gary's intern for 4 weeks, and even if he doesn't pay me, I'm going to like bust my ass and like get enough out of this to be worth money later on. No, I guess I can't really say that I have like that much of a problem with it, but I do think that the rule should be that you get paid for things, and it should be the exception of, in exceptional and limited cases, sometimes the value exchange is such that maybe you're getting more out of it than you are money. That's, I guess, as nuanced as a position as I could probably have.
Yeah, I agree. I was being a bit devil's advocate because I do agree with you. I do think there's a difference between paying college kids to, work. And even like we do at Rival, paying people for interviews. I think that that's a standard that should be set, even though the market doesn't demand it right now. Also, I want to call out what the article is focused on, and actually what happens most with these types of situations is actually the companies are giving the influencers product. So it's not that they're doing it completely for free. They're not getting cash, but they are getting product. The only thing that I will add to this conversation is, as well, Jenna and DuBose, Derik, I don't know if you know, but Leanne, my wife, has become a bit of an Instagram influencer actually. And she gets so many companies that send her free product and she posts about them. Right. And I'm kind of like, you should be asking for more. Like, I've seen her actually sell direct response, sell a lot of value worth of products from posting about companies that she likes, that she respects, and sometimes that she gets free products from. So I think it works. There is value there. I think it's probably everything that we're talking about. There is something where influencers need to kind of stand up and ask for what they want or what they feel they deserve, because having worked on the brand side so much, brands are going to try to get away with just giving people free products instead of money. And why not? Like, why not? If they can do that, and if influencers are willing to take it, that's probably where they should start. But most of them going in are probably willing to give the influencers some money if they ask for it. So I think that's part of it. I think there is an argument around standardization that certainly needs to happen, because it is still completely the Wild West out there in terms of finding influencers, pricing influencers, working with influencers. So I think that, as a headline, there's not too much to this conversation. Is paying influencers and free product ever okay? Yes. But below the surface, there's a lot to unpack and a lot more to discuss. All right. We are almost up on time. I'm going to do, I don't even need to go through all the points, because Jenna, you donating your points to Derik, because you got a lot for that rant on influencers. You got 10 points. So Derik was already in the lead, and now he is one. I'm not even going to add up DuBose's points because it doesn't matter. Derik, you are our winner.
Hey,
have 2 minutes
I've got a championship belt I can show off. We can do this.
You're gonna have to ship that to us.
Prepared.
Yeah. So Jenna and DuBose probably aren't up to speed on what it takes to become a small business champion out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
Did you have to win that in the small business cage match?
So we crowned at Autobooks, this is our Grey Poupon marketing thing. But we crown bankers, we reward them and crown them small business champions when they do something great in small business banking, and people love it. And we were at an event in the Disney World. So this is my rant. I'll just tell a story. We were at an event in Disney World. And I'm have this thing literally over my shoulder like this, because I'm just walking around the conference with this, and people are like, can I take a picture with that? I'm like, absolutely. And so we're just posting all the stuff. And this guy is there with his family, and he's got the beaten down Disney World vibe going on, and he just looks over at me and, congratulations. That's all he said. Congratulations. And I was like, thanks.
You wouldn't wear it around. I would wear it around Disney. Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, it was the hit. People are taking that. Hey, can I wear it? Can I walk around with it? Can I get a picture with it? It's this cult thing that's taken off. So it's fun. So that's my rant. I see the time to the belt.
See the time to the belt. I love it. All right. We actually have 1 minute left. So that means we can go to the grab bag. Do we want to talk about how Top Gun 2 is the best movie ever? Or do we want to talk about pickleball? Derik, you get to choose since you're the champion.
Let's go Top Gun.
All right. Well, that's the end of the conversation, basically, because it is the best movie ever.
Well, I want to hear.
Is it better than the original? Is it better than the original? What's do I need to know the plot points of the original Top Gun to go into this?
Here's what I will say, and then I will tie it back to marketing somehow. Watch this. It's terrible and it's amazing. It's one of those really good bad movies.
Is it terrible because you're frightened that
is basically horrible?
Oh, okay. It's not that you're terrified that Tom Cruise, who is in his 60s, is flying a fighter jet. Is that why it's terrible?
No,
it's
he's
the
great.
script. Okay.
He was great. Not a gray hair on him.
You have to say that about people who own fighter jets. You don't want to anger them.
All right, here's my tie to marketing. So Top Gun is now the highest grossing Memorial Day movie of all time, which, yes, as we've talked about, the best marketing is a great product. It is the best movie ever. But also, I think it's really interesting. They were going to release it 2 years ago in COVID. They talked about going releasing it to people at home as opposed to in the theater, and they held off. They held off for 2 years, whatever the costs were, and they put a massive marketing campaign behind it. So I know, I'm definitely the target demographic because I love Top Gun 1. But yeah, I think they did a good job. Strong execution, strong
Do you think there's something psychological about the, this is maybe kind of too deep for the end here, but like how people are like longing for like to be brought back to something before the pandemic or before all this crazy stuff. And like this thing launches and then it's just like this release of like, it takes me back to when things were a little bit less chaotic. I think there also seems to be like a rise of 80s nostalgia. I think that's been covered and talked about, right? Like you've got the Stranger Things. I think that was kind of at the early stages of it. I think of the Burger King logo, Pizza Hut. Didn't they all go back to like 1980s? I think I saw an article somewhere of there's like a Challenger sunscreen brand that's all like 1980s font and design. So that's probably part of it as well.
But I think the 80s is to us what our parents had for the 50s, right? Like, I think it's a broad period that's very hard to define from like 83 to about 95, and anything that was good in it now succeeds. But it's not like everything from the 80s is going to come back and naturally do well. Wasn't there there's a failed Bill and Ted's movie? So you kind of go, it's not naturally that you're just going to make money with everything.
It didn't have Tom Cruise in it. There you go.
That is true.
All right. On that note, we're going to wrap up for today. Thanks for joining us. Derik, our champion, thank you for joining and being our first guest on Punchy. That's all we got for you today. Have a great day. Take care. Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS of the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career.